Hello and welcome to New Filmmakers Los Angeles in partnership with Movie magazine. My name is Danny DeLillo and we're here at the South Park Center and I'm here with Lindsey Grayzel with her movie, The Reluctant Radical. Let's take a look at the clip.
I was going, hey, wait a minute, the world's in collapse here and we're not doing anything about it. And people were like, oh yeah, that's a problem. And there was a sense of utter disconnected in realities.
Climate change is just dealt with as if it was any other discrete environmental issue.
Thank you so much for bringing your film to us.
Thank you and for inviting me.
Honestly, it's one of those documentaries where I left the film and I'm a different person now. I'm more educated and more informed, and I encourage everyone to see it. But for those that haven't seen your film, tell us a brief synopsis.
So The Reluctant Radical is a feature documentary that follows one person, Ken Ward. He's a climate activist. And his history is that he was leading environmental organizations through typical lobbying processes for decades in the leadership role. And over the years, he became more and more freaked out about climate change and more despondent about the ability of the organizations that he was leading to do anything about it. And eventually decided that direct action was the most effective political tool for him.
Yeah, I mean, Ken is quite an incredible person and fascinating. And what I love about him, he doesn't let anyone stand in his way. He just goes out there and sends his message out, which is very refreshing because it's certainly a topic we're really talking about right now in the world, thankfully. But where did this situation come for you, Lindsey? Where did you suddenly discover this, or wanting to take on this project or make a documentary about this?
So myself, I mean, I've been concerned about climate change for a decade, but I hadn't really, it wasn't keeping me up at night, let's put it that way. We had a little electric car, we have solar panels, but I figured I was, donating to the Sierra Club and those people were on it. I didn't really realize how bad the situation was until I met Ken and started talking with him, and then subsequently did my own research about really how close to the edge of the cliff we are. So I have been making films for a while for clients, but I have never made my own independent documentary, and I've always wanted to.
This is your first one? My goodness, I don't believe you. It's amazing.
Well, my first independent,
wow,
like my own thing.
Yeah.
Right. So, and when I met Ken, he was just such an intriguing person.
Yeah.
So open, so vulnerable. And so I floated the idea of doing just like a 10 or 15 minute short with him, which he agreed to. Of course, it turned into a 77-minute feature.
I'm glad it did. Yeah. I mean, honestly, it was amazing. He is quite a character, and I love just the fact you go through his history and just him growing up and what his experiences were. And I think one of the most amazing things is sometimes when we can't relate to ourselves, maybe what's going on in the world, or we don't look into it too deeply enough. I loved his philosophy of that, why he cared so much. He had a son. And he thought, well, I don't want this for my son for the future. And it kind of almost gave him the sort of urge and surge to kind of really pursue. He's like, well, I don't want this for the future of my children, which I thought was, like any good parent should feel. But also what I love about him is he really is telling everyone it's urgent, like this is really going on.
Yeah.
Was there lots of things that you kind of discovered whilst making the documentary about how urgent it is right now about climate change?
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, when I came into it, I was like, oh yeah, this is a good thing to talk about. And now I'm like, we, like everywhere I go, I'm telling people like we have basically 2 years to turn this around. I mean, IPCC said 12 years just recently with their most recent report, but other scientists have said 2 years, and we're talking about trigger points where the ecosystem is not going to be able to recover because the process is so far down. So it's an emergency, and we need to be acting like it's an emergency, and it's people like Ken who are forcing us to stop and actually think about it. It's an uncomfortable topic to think about, of course, and that is what I was trying to really delve into in the documentary, is why are we unable to face it, and when we are confronted with this information, it's just so easy to be like, oh, that's too much, like I'm gonna segment that out from my thoughts and go on with my normal life and pretend that that's just in the background.
I think one of the things, by the way, your documentary was so beautifully shot given how serious the matter was. And one thing that I loved about it and reminded me of how beautiful this planet really is and how we are not doing enough to protect it, look after it, and appreciate it. And you know, some amazing shots of just the world that we live in, particularly obviously, you know, where he is from as well. Kind of, you know, going for this documentary, I imagine there's quite a lot of challenges that you had, which you just briefly mentioned me off set, which I'm sure you'll go into about as well. But you had some kind of insane situations, like, you know, from one of the opening scenes when you literally have people dangling off a bridge. I mean, what was it like shooting kind of a movement like that that was trying to sort of, you know, stop this big company shell from, you know, kind of trespassing and trying to, you know, literally ruin the planet, and you got these people dangling who are protesting. What was the experience like for you as a filmmaker being part of that and filming that?
It was wild. It was exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved being there. And it was a crazy day. Not only was this action happening, and no one knew that it was going to happen. I mean, Greenpeace was very quiet about it.
Yeah.
It wasn't until those climbers were dangling from the bridge that we found out about it. And it was 104 degrees. I was working on a little DSLR that kept overheating.
Oh, God.
And so just cursing myself and trying to move into the shade, cool down my camera, go out, shoot some more. The beauty of it was such an intense thing that a lot of my friends and colleagues were there filming too, just because that's what was happening.
Yeah.
So I collected footage from a number of sources to help me put that scene together.
And working with Ken, I mean, you know, he is quite an unbelievable character, and you know, he's sort of someone that everybody should meet, I think, to kind of really get influenced by all the important facts that he's saying. And I think one thing I like about his rhetoric and how he talks is that he's not mincing his words. He's saying, this is serious, this is happening now. And I love it when he was going around in, you know, in different places to sort of talk to environmentalists about how important it is. What was it like working with him personally, you know, and making this documentary? Did he kind of have any influence on certain things, or were you just kind of following him around?
I was just following him around. Yeah, he had zero patience for any, like, oh, could you bend over and do that again? He would be like, what is this?
I love that.
No. So, I mean, I was just, you know, I was like, okay, that's cool. This is cinema verite. This is how it's going to be, and I have to, like, get it when I can, so. I
mean, I imagine you had an incredible amount of challenges making this film, but what was the biggest challenge you felt making this particular project?
Well, definitely when I was arrested and charged with 3 felonies. That was the big
challenge. You can't beat that, really, can you? There you go. What happened?
Well, the culminating action in the film, I don't know that I want to...
No, you don't have to go into detail.
Okay.
No.
It was a big deal, and I had consulted with lawyers to make sure I knew I wasn't myself breaking the law.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, the police arrested me after they arrested Ken, charged me and my cameraman with 3 felonies and a misdemeanor. And naively, I thought, oh, as soon as they realize I'm a filmmaker, they're just going to let me go. I was even like on the way in the police car to the jail. I'm like thinking about if I can, you know, how long it will take me to get out. Can I get scenes of Ken coming out of jail?
Yeah.
Yeah, no. They kept the charges on for a month before they dropped him, and I had to get lawyers and the whole deal. It was terrible.
I just find that amazing, and you know, honestly, congratulations to you for making a film and making a film that is really about saving our planet and informing us and putting your own circumstances at risk for that. I think you should get a medal, if anything. Honestly, I really do. What's it like, you know, making this film? Obviously, you thought it was going to be a 10, 12-minute film, and then all of a sudden it's this huge feature film. And really, honestly, a feature film could go on to many different, it could be a series, I mean, really, of all the things that's going on, which is fantastic. What's it like then having it like at NewFilmmakers LA in front of an audience? What's that feeling like when you are showing this to a whole new audience?
It's definitely really interesting to hear people's reactions, which are very different from place to place and audience to audience. I feel grateful for the journey. I've learned so much about filmmaking and certainly about you know, how distribution flows and all of that. But the best parts for me are when people actually tell me that the film impacted them or made them think about their own actions or what they are going to do. That's why I made the film, and so that makes me really happy.
Well, honestly, I can't highly recommend, not just for the goodness of yourselves, but for understanding about the planet. I recommend everyone to see this film. I really do. What is next for you, Lindsey?
That's a good question. I'm getting ready to release the film on iTunes and Amazon and
brilliant.
Google Play.
Yeah.
DVDs from my website.
Fantastic.
And then I'm going to start a new project, and I don't quite know what it is yet.
What's your website?
TheReluctantRadical.com.
So that's where you can get your DVD from there as well. So obviously you're a very experienced filmmaker, but what was it like, and what piece of advice would you have as a filmmaker after making your first independent project for anyone else out there who'd like to follow in your footsteps?
Not to get distracted, I think. Along the way, I had this idea to make the film about Ken, and along the way it was very tempting to broaden that to a whole movement, or just this group, or all the valve turners. And it was super tempting. It would have been much more difficult logistically, much more expensive, and I chose to just keep the focus on Ken, and I think that was the right decision, because it was a personal story that I was telling. It wasn't a story about a movement. So whatever your vision is, you just have to keep coming back and checking in with what that vision is, so you don't get distracted and waste a lot of time and energy doing other things.
That's a really good piece of advice. I think we're all guilty of doing that. I think it's really important. Lindsey, I'm so thankful that you shared this film with us, because honestly, it's one of those life-changing films that you watch and you're altered differently, and we all should really care about the planet, and we're looking forward to seeing much more of your work. So thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Lindsey, everybody.